G'day, I'm Paul. No, it's okay, we haven't started doing used car reviews. This is, in fact, brand new. It is the Toyota LandCruiser 70 series, and this right here is the SUV version of it. There's a few different ones. You've got a ute, you've got the SUV, you've got a troop carrier as well. So there's one for every need. This is the top spec version. It's called the GXL. It's priced at a little over $71,000, but if that's too expensive, they do a version that's a little bit cheaper that has wind-up windows that is a little over $67,000. Now this, in terms of competitors, doesn't really have any. It used to compete with the Defender when that was brand new. Now that it has a new version that's a whole lot luxurious and very different to this, it doesn't really have that as a competitor anymore. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car. If you want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, you can use the time codes up on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, just scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you can join us when we step back in time. So before we talk about the exterior, I should preface when I said we don't do used car reviews, we actually did one, which was the GTSR W1 Ute. So if you want to check that video out, click up here. I think if you like this sort of stuff, you might like an LS9 powered Ute. But anyway, external, 6 colors to pick from, all but this weird yellow shade that I've never seen these in, plus white, is an extra $675. I mean, what is there to say about the design? It looks like a brick, and I think that's why these are so synonymous with, I don't know, just tough conditions and being able to go anywhere. If you go to the middle of Australia, this is all you see. The bigger 200 series LandCruiser plus these. You'll rarely ever see other vehicles, and that's because these are so dependable and they never really change. So in terms of the design, you can see down here you've got these lashings of chrome, a big Toyota logo, big bit of bumper there. It really is quite a solid setup. Now you're not going to find any radars or any other fancy stuff down the front here. This car doesn't actually have any parking sensors, any cameras, anything sort of modern, so there's nothing really that can go wrong up here. You've got a functional hood scoop for the diesel V8. Over here you have a set of standard halogen headlights and then halogen indicator globe, and then fog lights down the bottom there. Let's whip around to the side. Now down here you've got a set of 16-inch alloy wheels and all-terrain tyres. Above the tyres you've got these sort of plastic arch protectors. Now if you have a think about all the modern SUVs today that have this kind of stuff, this is where it's born from. Rugged off-roaders like this, they try and add this stuff to modern SUVs to make them look rugged, but this is where it originated from. This is the OG of the wheel arch protector. Now, this is something you're not going to see on a lot of modern SUVs today, and that is an automatic locking hub. That means the vehicle's able to decide when it wants to engage the front axle. You can, though, lock it in. So if you are going to be doing a lot of heavy off-roading, when you do lock the hub in, it means that it's permanently engaged and it's not going to accidentally unlock. But in the auto mode, when you switch between 2 high and 4 high, it'll determine when it wants to lock those hubs. In the previous generation, or the older version of the 7 Series, you had manually locking hubs, so you could, in theory, isolate the entire front axle from the drivetrain. That meant that if you had issues with it, you weren't going to run into any dramas when you're out in the middle of nowhere. So it is a slight compromise, but I guess for the ease of use, it means you don't have to hop out and engage the hubs every single time you want to go into a four-wheel drive mode. Now, you've also got a snorkel as standard. You've got a side indicator there. You have an electric aerial on the other side that goes up and down when the radio goes on and off, and you can manually control that as well. Wing mirrors. These are entirely manual on both sides of the car, so no electric adjustment there. Toyota LandCruiser badge. You've got these metal side steps. You have central locking on this model, but you also have a keyhole to get you access if that fails. Come around to the back. So here you have a spare tyre on the back. It's a full-size all-terrain tyre. And then you have a split tailgate, so you can see it opens there in 2 parts. We'll have a closer look at that later on. But more metal down there. You have an indicator brake light and then another high-mounted brake light as well. And the GXL badge, which signifies this is the top spec model. Now, let me know in the comments section below. I understand why this exists. It's for people that want no fuss. A lot of the components in here are going to be the exact same as they were 20 or 30 years ago, and it means you can get spares wherever you want. And if it does break down in the middle of nowhere, you can kind of just fix everything yourself. Do you think a car like this should exist today, or do you reckon they should be done with it? Let me know your thoughts down there. So we are inside the 70 series. Let's start off with the key. Here it is here. So traditional key, you can use that in the door slot and you also use that to start the car. You also have central locking as well. So lock and unlock on there, and then the Toyota logo on the back. I'll pop that in. As soon as I turn this, you're going to hear a noise. That's the aerial coming up and the radio switching on. Now, in terms of the styling, as you can imagine, it is fairly basic and straightforward. There's nothing too special here, and it's been like this for ages. They really haven't updated the styling a lot. Over the generations, the radio system has changed, so this is the latest version of that, and I'll run through the infotainment in just a second. But you can see features up the top like the clock, you've got outside temperature, and also a lap timer randomly. Now, what about the material and the touch points? All very, very hard, except the door rest, which is nice and soft. How hard are they? Well, we've got our durometer. We've tested the main surfaces in this car. If you want to see how this compares to other cars we've tested before, have a look at the link in the description. Now, what about build quality? Look, it feels pretty solid. There is a lot of flex in parts here, and even down to the bumper at the front there, it's got little rubber isolators on it as well. It's this type of stuff that makes this car durable. If this was all strong and sort of really well screwed in, it would become too brittle over corrugations and the type of thing that you experience out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, it is flexible enough to cater for the demands of middle Australia. Before we look at the infotainment system, I just want to run you through some of the buttons here. So you have this controller here for the aerial. You can actually set its maximum height. So if you're going into a car park or something, you can have it max out a little lower. Over on this side, you have an idle up switch. This allows you to keep a higher idle speed. This is especially useful if you're starting in extremely cold climates and the car needs to get warmer quicker. And then finally, you have a manual DPF burn switch. So it does have an automatic diesel particulate filter burn that happens every 100 to 300 kilometers, but you can initiate it manually yourself using the button. Okay, let's talk infotainment. So this has been upgraded recently. Well, if you have a look at the manual, there was basically an AM radio, AM only, AM, FM, and then recently they added this, which now includes satellite navigation. It's a 6.1-inch infotainment system with shortcut buttons down the side. It has AM and FM radio along with Bluetooth, and that's mated to a 4-speaker stereo. You also have USB input as well if you want to stream from your phone. There is voice recognition, doesn't really work that well. Satellite navigation is built in, but there's no smartphone mirroring, so no Apple CarPlay, no Android Auto. For the most part though, this actually does an okay job, so does what it needs to do, and it comes with Toyota Link as well. So it's very basic, but with this car, Toyota uses parts they know work, and this infotainment system came out ages and ages ago. So it's kind of been proven reliable. They've ironed out all the kinks, and then they're happy to stick it in this car and know that it'll last 20 or 30 years or something like that. Okay, now what about safety technology? Well, it's going to be a very brief discussion because it doesn't have very much. So you've got 2 airbags, driver and front passenger. You also have stability control, which they integrated into this not that long ago. It is worth pointing out that Toyota actually spent a whole lot of money on the Ute version of this, integrating side airbags so they could get a 5-star safety rating. The reason it does is a lot of mines and the commercial industry use that vehicle, and a lot of them move to a requirement for side airbags and also 5-star ratings. That didn't flow on to the SUV though, so this has no side airbags. It actually doesn't really have anything else. There's no front or rear parking sensors, there's no rear view camera, even though you've got a colour screen here. So when it comes to reversing, it really is only the spare tyre that is your parking sensor effectively. You can't see anything, you've got to get someone to help you if you're sort of parking in and around town. I will point out though something really interesting. I've noticed this just clever little thing here. It is just one of those bits that I mentioned earlier where over time they would have discovered that this rear view mirror was perhaps not standing the test of time. So they've installed this tiny bit of rubber that sits on the back of it and prevents it from bending the main frame on the mirror. So kind of gives you an idea of the things they do to add durability to this car. Righto, let's talk about practicality and where are you going to charge your devices or have your devices running, because in a vehicle like this you might have nav and other sort of external bits that are mounted to the car. So you've got one USB port attached to the infotainment system that supplies your music but can also charge. Down here you've got 2.1 amp charging points and then a 12 volt outlet. But there is also one more 12 volt. It is just here, and it's actually a cigarette lighter as well. I remember when I was a kid I was sitting in Dad's car and I didn't really know what this did. I pushed it in, it came out, and I touched it and like incinerated my finger. But it is interesting that this is one of the few cars on the market that still actually has a cigarette lighter. It even has an ashtray there for your durries. I know how much you tradies like your durries. So your ashtray's there, and then you can also store your durries over there if you want. In terms of other storage, you need to put your phone somewhere. It slots in beautifully down the front there while it's charging. And then on your cup holders, I've got my floral coffee cup here. Doesn't really fit in, so you've got to prop it up with your keys, otherwise the lid will come off, but it does fit just a standard size bottle in there. Center console here has like a coin tray type thing that comes out, and then the storage is huge. It goes all the way down there, so you can see for reference how big that is. There is a map pocket down the side here. It's not going to fit your bottle though, although the passenger side one has a bottle holder inside it. And then finally you have a pretty generously sized glove box. Okay, let's talk comfort. So the good news is that air conditioning is now standard. It's not optional on these things anymore. Up the top there, you have a lever here that controls which vents the air comes out of. You've got a recirculation lever beneath it. You can also go from cold to hot. Now this is interesting. So you've got your fan speed controller here, but then behind it is the AC controller. So you can actually determine how much the air conditioning is involved in the air that comes out. So it's quite an antiquated setup, but it actually works really well. And the air conditioner in this is killer. It is for hot Australian summers. This does a great job. Seats themselves, they're interesting. The top is like this sort of padded vinyl type stuff. The bottom, I don't know what material it is, but it gives me goosebumps when I touch it. It's kind of weird. Is it velour? I don't know what that trim is, but it's bloody weird. So seat is fully manually adjustable for forward and backward motion, and then the backrest can also go forwards and backwards. You'll notice here on the steering wheel, there's no controls for the radio, so that's all manually adjustable. There's no auto lights or auto wipers, but the steering wheel itself offers tilt and reach adjustment. So in the back seat of the 70, I'm a little surprised there isn't actually a great deal of legroom here. So you can see my knees are pretty much wedged into that seat. Yes, I have my seat quite far back, but I thought there'd be a little bit more room. Heaps of toe room though, and headroom is really decent. Not a great deal of creature comforts here. So you have map pockets in the back of the seats. There's no air vents here that I can see, but you've got grab handles to get in. This is really working out well for you guys that love your diaries, because there are ashtrays in the doors as well, so you can all have one while you're driving. Also on top of that, you have manual door locks on the actual doors themselves. This is part of the reason it doesn't have a 5-star safety rating. These are from the 70s. It is just a lap seatbelt, so no sash there at all. And there's no ISOFIX points or child anchorage points. Okay, let's talk cargo space. Now, I'll show you how this door works first. So it's split in two sections. You've got a little handle here that then locks into position. Inside the actual door, you have another grab handle, a separate lock for it, and also a release lever. And then you open the second part of the door by pulling that. So, welcome to the cavernous cargo space. You can see your two speakers there that form part of that 4-speaker sound system. Off to the right-hand side, we have a little cubby hole for the windscreen washer fluid for the rear, plus these side windows that pop out. Then we also have a cubby hole on the other side, which contains the jack. Now, we don't have a cargo volume figure for this. We've looked literally up and down everywhere. So if we do find one, we'll update it in the comments section below. But I'll show you how it fits our cargo. So laptop bag in there, and then suitcase in here. You can see it's a massive, massive space. You can actually increase it further by moving that second roll. I'll show you how that works. So around here, all you do is drop the backrest. So that folds there, and then you've got a separate lever here that tumbles that out of the way, and then you have a flat load space that is pretty versatile, if you ask me. Man, what a day. This feels quintessentially Australian. We're in the 70 series on the road. It's bloody hot outside. The air conditioning's cranked. Everyone's happy. So what is powering this beast? So it's a 4.5 litre turbocharged V8 diesel engine. Makes 151 kilowatts of power and 430 newton meters of torque, and it's mated exclusively to a 5-speed manual, so no automatics and no 6 speeds available across the range. Now, this is an interesting point, right? The diesel, it's a V8 diesel. Only 400-ish newton meters of torque. It really isn't a great deal, and there is a reason for that. This goes back to all the other points I made earlier about them using parts they know will last the test of time. And this engine is just that. It is absolutely unstressed. You can go and get aftermarket automatic transmissions installed. You can go get tunes on these that bump it up to 5, 6, 7, 800 newton meters of torque, and then you're getting well within the range of where this engine needs to be. But here in stock form, it literally just does the job, and it does the job day in, day out. Now, what does that feel like behind the wheel? So we're doing about 60 now. I'll drop it back to third and punch it. Look, it's not the world's quickest car, but it really just sounds cool while it's going. You can hear the V8 murmuring in the background, and it just picks up nicely, pushes you back in the seat lightly, and you feel like you're actually getting somewhere. So what's the gearbox actually like? Well, look, you could literally give this to, she never watches my videos, so my wife, who doesn't drive manuals, and I genuinely think you could just drive it. It is really just dummy proof. So that means that when you are tootling about, you really don't have to think about anything. You just swap through the cogs, nice and tight gear shifts. Yeah, it is just fuss free. So Toyota doesn't provide a 0 to 100 time for this, but you know, just so it's like the rest of our reviews, we thought we'd put it up against a stopwatch anyway. Let's talk fuel economy. So Toyota provides an official figure of 10.7 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres. This doesn't actually have a trip computer, so there's no way of verifying that without breaming the tank and all that kind of thing. So, but to give you an idea of how much mileage you should expect, it has a 130 litre fuel tank, so you should be getting around 1,200 litres per tank. If you go to the troop carrier, that actually has a bigger fuel tank again. It's 180 litres, so there is more than enough fuel there to keep you going. It is just a little bit thirsty because here, if I jump up to 100 k's an hour in fifth, watch that tacho. We go past 80, 90, and then 100. We're sitting at 2,000 RPM, so you can see why it uses a fair bit of fuel. If you're doing a lot of highway driving, it's just going to be sitting up there. It would be nice if they fitted this with a 6-speed, that'd bump it down nicely. So you may have heard all that noise there when we were at 100. There is a lot of wind noise, mainly coming around that snorkel area, but yeah, the sound insulation isn't fantastic. You don't really get that much road noise. It is just mainly wind noise at highway speeds that comes into the cabin. Now, what about the ride? The ride is interesting. So it's leaf sprung at the rear and coil sprung at the front. And look, it's okay. It sort of throws you about a little bit, but it's surprisingly comfortable given a lot of utes that are leaf sprung tend to buck about a lot. This has that tendency, but it's on the comfortable side of throwing you around. Now let's talk handling. Yes, I am very aware that it's not a sports car. We've got our little corner here. Oh, that's fun. Look, I mean, it's doing not that fast through the corner, but it's fun nevertheless. It has a fair bit of body roll. The steering doesn't really have a great deal of feel. It actually feels a bit like that Gladiator we drove recently. If you want to watch that review, click up here. It's kind of quite vague in terms of steering response. Let's talk visibility. Look, out the front, it's great. I'm sitting up nice and high here. Big bonnet bulges there, and I can see down to the corners of the car. Down the sides, it's good. Obviously, the wing mirrors are annoying because they're manually adjustable, no electric adjustment, but once they're set, they're fine. Visibility out the rear is not very good, though. Those headrests in the second row pretty much block most of the vision, but you can use that tyre as a guide when parking. And if you are doing any towing, a 3,500 kilogram braked towing capacity. I think this would be handling 3.5 tonnes a whole lot better than most dual cab utes on the market. Finally, turning circle, 12.6 metres. It's actually not terrible. I mean, it's not the world's smallest turning circle, but for the most part, it's actually pretty acceptable. Okay, let's do some light off-roading. I'll run you through the specs first. So basically, I mentioned earlier that this is predominantly a two-wheel drive, but you can switch to high-range four-wheel drive. You can also do low-range four-wheel drive, and those automatic locking hubs will take care of everything for you. You've also got front and rear differential locks. You have a ground clearance of 230 millimeters. You have an approach angle of 33 degrees, which is the angle of the face you can approach before you hit anything, and then a departure angle of 23 degrees, which is the same but in reverse. And then finally, you have a 700 millimeter weighting depth. Now, it is worth noting, especially with the front and rear differential locks, that you can't use those on sealed surfaces. So if you do want a better explanation of why and how all that works, click up here to watch our four-wheel drive controls explained video. Now, I'm going to do something a little different here. So normally we would just go up in four-wheel drive high range and you'd see how it works. Given this thing has all-terrain tyres and it's a bit of a beast, and this is a very basic off-road course, I want to show you how strong the engine and the reduction gearing system is. We're going to go up basically in first gear low range. I'm just going to let go of the throttle and you'll see what happens. So to engage low range, it's 1 down to 4 high, then a lift to neutral, and then finally down to 4 low. I'm going to clear just the bottom log first, just with a bit of throttle, because if it gets stuck on the bottom, it just sort of doesn't really go anywhere. But after that, I'm just going to let go of the throttle and watch what the revs do here. Okay, so clearing the bottom one. There it is there. I'm now completely out of the throttle, and you can see the revs have dived down. The car is now just using the sheer torque of the engine to get it up here in first gear without any throttle whatsoever. That is really impressive. The last car I was able to do this in was the old Defender, but this just shows you how much torque is available here when you have the right gearing in place. Really impressive. Okay, now let's go downhill. I'm going to throttle on a bit so we can hurry this up. I'm going to go down here in first. We don't have hill descent control, but this should give you an idea of how it actually descends this without needing to use something like hill descent control. Okay, here we go. So I'll line it up, 230 mil of ground clearance. It's going to be more than enough to clear this stuff. But what I love here, first gear coming down here, it's just crawling beautifully. If I want a little bit more pace, I can just roll into the throttle slightly. And then if I want to slow it down, I just roll straight out of the throttle. This is ideally what low range is for, and why I prefer something like this over a hill descent control, because ultimately you have more control over what the car is doing, and you can control the descent speed a whole lot easier. So Toyota LandCruiser 70 series. Look, I'm not going to pretend for 1 second that anything about this is modern. Let's just get that out of the way. But I know that this serves a purpose, and for so many people, these things are a workhorse. They're dependable. They need to work every single day. And by kind of perfecting the formula ages ago and not changing it, they've guaranteed that. When you make a new car today, you have to do engineering and you have to just do constant cycles to make sure things work and they stay working. And that's hard to get right every single time you engineer a new car, whereas these guys have done it once a long time ago and they just keep doing the same thing. So still built in Japan and still very dependable and reliable. And look, the best thing is, while they are expensive to buy to start with, they hold their value extremely well. So even if you've got one with 100, 200,000 Ks on the clock, they still are worth something down the track. Now, let me know in the comments section below. Do you think that these things should exist, or are we done with them? Do you think they are iconic and should stay on? Let me know what your thoughts are, and let me know when you think production will end, because we surely can't be too far away from that. Now, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you like it and share it. And if you haven't done so already, hit subscribe and press the bell icon as well, so you can find out every single time we drive one of these things. But until next time, take it easy.